Today we have Sheila Lambert with us doing our Snacks with an Expert. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about this. I think this is going to be a really great conversation. So our goal is going to be, if there's any questions or anything you have on the replay of this, any recordings, things along those lines, just send comments into whatever post you see it, and then we'll either make sure it gets to Sheila or Sheila will be the one posting it. So she'll make sure she gets back to you as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sheila and take it away.
Okay, thank you. This is exciting for me, everyone, because I don't think I've ever done a training with hybrid. So I'm learning every day, and so bear with my technical skills. And so it's so nice to see everyone, or at least hear everyone, and thanks for joining on such a, I don't know about you, but I feel like it's been a really long week. Feels like it should be Friday. So thank you for joining and being a part of this. I'm going to talk about psychological safety. It's been such an important topic in most of the conversations I've had with organizations lately in the coaching sessions. I'm an executive coach, for those of you who don't know me. I work with organizations around leadership development and training and culture, and how to navigate culture in such a fast-paced world right now, and certainly with individuals who are our offices that are really navigating this. How do I phase people back into the offices? It's becoming even more of a hot topic. So it's always been there, you know, leaders needing to look at how do we create this culture within the environment or within the workforce that is inclusive. And now it's magnified. So we really have to, as leaders, dig a little bit. So my hope today is to talk a little bit about what is that psychological safety definition, and you know, what does that mean? And maybe we can all just have this conversation about what it means for you, what it means for your organization, what does it mean for your teams? And I will certainly make sure we are including in, you know, some of the deeper level areas of that safety and that culture for all of the people that we work with. There's also 4 stages of psychological safety that has most recently come out through COVID. I don't have that. I didn't send that to you, Sam, so I will get that copy to you, and we can certainly follow up and send that email to everyone. So everyone just has like the stages. The stages don't go into everything we're going to talk about, but it might be a nice piece of paper to put near your computer, or take a picture on your phone, because I find for myself, and I teach this to individuals, just reflecting on that every day is a lot of times what we need to just, you know, not show that look on our face, or not give that side to people, and to help create a safe environment. So I guess my question is to all of you, you know, you came here, and I'm wondering what your own definition of psychological safety is. So what are some words that comes to your mind when we think about that big word, psychological safety?
Protecting your mind.
Protecting your mind. Okay, I love that.
Comfortability, maybe?
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the ability to speak your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about already the layers that we're talking about. Protecting your mind. Chris, you said speaking. Comfortability. Yeah. And Christine, I think you said speaking your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else? So it's all of that, and there's really no true definition. It's all of that. And this is what I want you to encourage you to think about when it comes to, I'm not sure, you know, where everyone is at as far as leading yourself in your business or leading your teams, but to think about what is your engagement with the people that you're working with the people that you're managing, maybe with the people that you're managing up to. Like, what is that engagement like? And are you allowing that safe space for people to be themselves? And I'll tell you that that's a hard question. Just sit and reflect on that. A lot of people, and I will tell you that myself included, certainly with this presentation and a lot of them that I prepare, I think about myself in my previous world of leading teams, and inevitably I can always come up with an example. And I came up with an example of this. So think about not so much your first answer that you might have said, which a lot of times people say, yes, I created an inclusive culture. I allow safety. I support people in whatever opinion they have, and I allow them to share that. But the psychological safety piece is really even deeper. So we're going to go into that a little bit. And if I can share my screen appropriately, I'll try and do that. Okay. Voila. Do I got it? No? Is it up online?
Yep.
Oh, yay.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So feeling safe to speak up about legitimate concerns. What are some examples of concerns that you can come up with that you would either, it's in your world right now, or you're anticipating that you either yourself or your employees or the people that you consult with might want to express?
Harassment in the workplace.
That's a hard one, right? And so I would imagine, Michelle, for some of your client base, there might be this pause or caution from an employee to feel trust that they can express how that feels, right? I would imagine they go back and forth with, is this harassment? Is this not harassment?
Right.
And do I have a safe place to talk?
Exactly.
Anyone else have examples?
Maybe like ethical, like, so like maybe the company's going in a direction that you don't find ethical, being able to speak up about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about what that feels like for an employee in seeing unethical behavior of their manager or of the actual company. And who do you go to? And some people feel safe to go to their HR. And I've worked with a lot of people who don't feel safe to go to their HR person or department. And so, it's up to that leader, and we're all leaders, to be able to feel comfortable enough and have that mental safety to know what that right next step is. So that's that other piece. And we're going to get into that a little bit more too, but to also effectively resolve most disagreements. So there's going to be conflict and there's going to be disagreement. So psychological safety is being able to have those deepening conversations with respect, with empathy, with vulnerability. That is so important. And once that stage is set, and that sounds simple and it's not, then and only then will people begin to feel safe. And psychological safety is looking at intervening when appropriate or when needed. If there's a situation where someone else is being attacked verbally, if there's disrespect of another person, what is that? The old higher education term is bystander intervention. So what is that intervention that I need to do when I see something around me, even if it doesn't have anything to do with me? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then feeling included and feeling valued is another component of it. So a few bullet points, and then I'll open it up. But I'd like you to think about these bullet points. The first one is, as I'm going off the slides a little bit, in order to provide that psychologically safe environment, I need to show my team that I'm engaged. So what does that engagement look like? Boy, is that hard, right? When the leader has so much on their plates in front of them by emails, right? And there's a distraction. That sometimes doesn't allow for engagement. Now, it doesn't mean the leader shouldn't be busy or shouldn't have to do their work, but allowing space for your employees or your teammates or the people in your environment to see that, hey, I'm here to just check in with you. And how are you doing? Even though you know that there's, your email is dinging in the background. So that's something, again, I find a lot of people when I'm working with them in coaching is that first layer is, yeah, I'm very available. But then when the 360s come, approachability, distraction, right? She or he isn't really listening to me. And that's usually, that oftentimes is a common surprise. So being able to dig a little bit is so important with, moving your people into this safe space. Second bullet I want you to think about is showing the people that you work with and your teams that you're listening. And I guess it fits into a little bit of what I just said, but are you listening? How are those reflective questions going within your conversations? What I hear you say is this, is that what you're saying? I want to make sure I really understand this, because we all know what those misperceptions will lead to. How is the body language in listening? Are you offering a safe place for people to share what they're really thinking and feeling through your body language? I'm trying to think of what else. What else is coming up when you're listening that I'm not touching base on?
The distractions, just putting the phone down or closing your computer, or that distraction piece.
Absolutely.
Is that eye contact, just like
Yes.
just being in the moment, I guess.
Absolutely. And my big thing way back when I was called, Michelle's probably heard this, maybe Jenny, you have too. I was called the ice princess when I started working in my career because I thought I couldn't show any emotion. So my patients at the time were like, I wasn't the dragon queen. The dragon queen was my counterpart. I was the ice princess. But that really showed that I wasn't being real. And then when I started becoming real, that was great. And I started managing, and that was great. But then I'm an intense person, I think, and I'm very emotive. So when I'm thinking, I oftentimes scrunch my face. And that perception is she's either judging me or she's thinking about something else. And that caused a conflict with me in a team that I was leading. And I was like, what's going on? What is she talking about? I'm always listening to her. I'm always attentive. But once we did this little exercise in a group, and it really opened up some eyes. And it opened up my eyes because the reality was I was listening to her, but she didn't feel heard because she was distracted by my facial distractions.
I've actually experienced something similar. So when I wear contacts, my eyes get dry.
Right, yeah.
So I do this, and I consciously know that I'm doing it, but I wonder what other people are thinking when I do it, whether it's like, do they think I'm annoyed by what something they're saying,
Like,
or
please hurry up.
right,
Finish
and
this.
it's literally just so I can see. And so I definitely, and then like nobody's ever mentioned that to me or anything, but I've thought about it, like, what does this look like? That's why I don't wear my contacts a lot, because of that and because they just drive me crazy. But that's definitely a big part.
Absolutely.
That's so funny because we make our own stories in our minds without having all the facts.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what about saying, hey, I just want to let you know I have dry eyes, so when I start doing that, I really am listening to you. But then take it a step further after you rub your eyes. So what I heard you just say is this, is that right?
Right.
Did I hear you right?
Mhm.
Right, because then it's engaging someone. It's creating this safe space. It's also showing that you're human and you got something in your eye,
Right.
right? And so I had to do that with my employee by saying, all right, just so that you know, I know my face might be looking this way, but I really am listening to what you're saying. And please let me know if you do think that and moving forward. So before you leave the room, we can clarify if I really heard what you need from me. So be vulnerable, and being human is what helps to create that safe space. And especially if you think about new employees, I met with a general partner yesterday, and we were talking about how even though these professionals are in a significantly professional role, if that made any sense, they are really new to working in a professional setting. And they don't know, can I ask a question? Can I not ask a question? Will I get in trouble if it's not the right answer? And she doesn't want them to have this feeling. And so some of it is coming from them, right? So we're going to do some work on that. But I think as a leader, it's remembering everyone's coming in from a different place. So the new people coming on, doing some check-ins. There's this exercise I do with teams around just opening up conversation, and it's getting to know you. That's the name of it. And one of the key things in there is just, hey, what are some misperceptions about you that I need to know? How do you like to receive feedback in a way that I can give you feedback that feels safer? Having those, like onboarding, adding it to the onboarding process, adding it into the team dynamics or building the teams is a really great exercise just to help create that safety. So I think you get where I could go on and on talking about
Yeah, I
that.
like that.
That was a very good one. I like that too, yeah.
'Cause a lot of times people don't, they're so stuffy, like they try to be something that they're not sometimes, just to make, because they feel like that's what everyone wants to see.
Right.
I think it's the opposite, right? You want to see the human side of somebody and the relatable side.
That's
And
right.
that they make mistakes and things are hard for them too, and whether you're a leader or you're not, or
right.
like at the top, it's not any easier at the top a lot of times. And so I think sometimes people like try to hide it, and that's something that I try not to do. I
You do a good
definitely do
job.
not hide the
No,
fact
you do a
that
good
I'm
job.
stressed out and things are not going the way
That's
I want to,
true.
but it's more just try to feel like I understand the problem.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. So good, think about those different layers. Avoiding, I want to say one more thing about that, because with listening comes empathy, and there's a couple of different types of empathy. There's empathy, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. And then there's the deeper empathy of really putting your foot in that, in those shoes. And we can't always do that, certainly. If someone has a situation going on in their personal life and we haven't had that experience, we can't completely put our feet in their shoes. But the listening and showing that deeper level of empathy with, wow, tell me a little bit more about what that experience is like for you. Deepens it a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying turn in that interaction with your employee, with your teammate, with your manager into a therapy session. But allowing some of that is going to provide that foundation that is necessary for people to move forward in so many different directions, in the cultural safety piece, and also when they're going to start doing the work that you want them to align with the mission and the vision, right? They're going to start doing it because they're going to feel safe enough to be able to be a part of that. Okay. The third one is avoiding blame. So someone doesn't do a project, tasks aren't completed, a mistake in the bookkeeping, right? You can all come up with your own examples. Our brain naturally brings us to what's called whole other training. I think Jenna and Michelle, you know this, but below the line. And when our brains bring us below the line, whole other training, so let me know if you want to talk more about that. But when our brain brings us to that below the line, it's natural, but it's our role, especially when we're talking about psychological safety and building a positive culture, to not live there. Living there would be I'm blaming and not taking responsibility. Living there would be talking negative, gossiping, just walking around with that intensity or negative energy. So that blame thing, again, think about, and we all do it, right? And sometimes we do it in our head first. I do it, like, okay, Sheila, you should be blaming. Okay, you're the one that spilled the water on the floor. Anyways, I could share plenty of personal examples too. Christina, anyone else have questions? Am I talking too fast? Is everyone
No,
good?
it's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Really enjoying it.
Okay. The fourth one is the one I love. I love them all, but I love this one, and that is self-awareness. And self-awareness can be the key to so many things as a leader, as a professional, as a person. But the same person, the partner I had a conversation with yesterday said, I think I'm doing a good job, and I want to build a leadership development program for my team, but I think it needs to start with me and my counterpart. I was like, yes, like I can't even believe they said that. I think I'm doing okay, but if I want to set a tone, I need to really show them that I want them to give me feedback, which means she wants to assess. She's looking at what are my blind spots? So those blind spots that we all have will be uncovered once we allow ourselves to self-assess. which means how was I in that meeting?
Mhm.
How am I engaging with the person I'm managing, or the teams that I'm working with, or the board, or my peers, or let's throw in my family, right? So that self-assessment is critical in creating the safety environment. And self-awareness, obviously comes through readings, comes through connectivity with others. A lot of times that self-assessment can come through 360 feedbacks, and through coaching, right, through assessments, and being able to take a look at how is my brain working and functioning, what do I need to adjust as I'm working with individuals. So the more learning opportunities and deep conversations and assessment building to look at what needs to be changed behaviorally, the more it's going to create that role model for your people and the safety component.
Is there a way that could get to be too self-aware, like where you sort of
Chris is like,
criticize,
oh no.
Yeah.
where you like criticize everything that you do? Like, is that a different thing altogether? Like,
Yeah, yes, I think that's a really good question, because it doesn't mean self-assess in a negative way.
okay.
And it doesn't mean allowing the self-doubt to live there constantly. And we all have the self-doubt. I call them those gremlins. And those are the thoughts that sabotage who we are and how happy we are. And so it really needs to be a balance, right? And the work I do around saboteur training, I'm doing a big workshop on that coming up. It's identifying when some of the realities come into play, but not letting them live there in a negative way. So being able to identify it, assess it, and come up with an action plan, and then say, all right, I'm not going to let it live there because I'm human. I mean, I'm summing that up, right? But it's a good question. It also, I guess to speak to that too is, and some of you might have done 360s before and have had positive or not so positive experiences, but it's also not a way to set up a tone for the people to, oh, finally I can give my feedback.
Right.
Right, and that's something that has to be really talked about in a sensitive way with the person who's saying, let's get the 360s done, so that it doesn't become the only vehicle. The goal isn't to use that as the vehicle for conversation. The goal is to open up the conversation that I allow it to happen within that the organization. Okay, negativity is nipping it in the bud. For example, is something else, and we talked about that when I mentioned that going below the line, and our brains will bring us to some of those places primarily because of stress, right? Stress is the key person or key thing that brings those things to light. But when we go there, we got to move it forward. And nipping negativity with teams. So, if we're real busy as leaders and we're not really paying attention to what's going on in teams, and one negative person, it's like that old VA, the hair commercial with the shampoo.
Yes.
One person goes out to play, they get 2 more and come back and play. Now we've got 4, and those 4 come out and get 8. So it multiplies, and we've all been in those teams, I'm sure. I know I have, and it's not fun to be in. And it certainly is where there's a lot of retention issues within the workforce. So being able to nip it and open up the conversation immediately when it's there, and not in a why are you being negative, but in a, hey, I'm really concerned about you because I've noticed been a little change, and can we talk about that? And what can I do differently? How can I help support you? Or maybe there's been too many of those conversations and it's time to say, you have a choice, right? You either move forward and be a part of the team or not. And so, again, this isn't saying that everything should become fluff in order to provide safety and safety within cultures. In fact, consistency and honest feedback is important, and that might mean letting people go as a way to maintain safety, for people to feel like they can live in a safe environment. I'm talking to the choir who's in front of me.
I'm right.
A teammate that was part of my team. She was an associate, and whoops, it says internet is, are you guys still with us?
Yes, it did cut out for a few seconds for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, same here.
She said, she was like, Sheila, just make a decision. Because sometimes as part of my, one of my assessments that I have, my big thing is collaboration. So it's important to include people. It's important to hear each other, hear the people that you're managing. But it's also important, and it's important to have them be part of the decision-making. But at some point, we need to know when is it our time to take that decisions, to make the decisions. But allowing for everyone to feel safe enough to say, I think we should do this, or I'm wondering if you've thought about that. Just allows it, right? I'm going like this because I can feel like that environment that just opens it up for people. Any thoughts, comments? Because I could talk all day long and I don't want to.
I don't know, I'm good with you continuing.
Yeah,
We're soaking it up.
Okay, so yes, including the team in those decisions is really important. And so I'm going to stop here and see if anyone has questions, and then move into something else. And this is not even my PowerPoint, so I think I'm just going to stop sharing. Just because I want to see people. Okay. Any questions so far?
I have a question. Do you have any advice or suggestions? And this is because my employer is on here. This has nothing to do with my current job situation, but a previous one, I found myself in a very unsafe psychological environment. And I could not turn to HR because of a conflict of interest. And I didn't really know where to turn or where to go or what to do. And I was kind of at a loss. So I don't know if you have any advice. If somebody can't go to an internal part of their company, what can they do?
Well, that's a hard one because I don't know the situation. And I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts here. My first thought is, I think it's important to assess whether or not you want to stay within that environment.
Yep.
Because if there isn't safety, what motivates you to continue staying in an environment?
Yeah.
That would be my first thing, right? The second thing would be use EAP services within your company to help get the support somewhere.
What
From
services?
someone else. Employee assistance services. So if the company has an EAP service, employee assistance program, which you should know about through your HR person, through your handbook, and if you're in an environment like that, at least asking that question to benefits, I would hope would be safe enough to ask that question. But EAP or outside counseling, because EAP just would send you to outside contracted counseling. But an outside therapist who's a third person that could, or coach that could help you to just sort it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And then help you to know what that next step is.
Gotcha.
But my first go-to was like, why are you staying in the environment? But some people need to stay in the environment because they need a job, obviously, and need the money, right? And so it's easier said than done.
And sometimes you think it'll go away,
And that's a good point too.
right? That it'll
Yeah.
just go away on its own,
Mhm.
or you just ignore it.
Yeah.
And
Or
let
I'll
it-
wait till something happens. Yeah, that's right, Michelle. Yeah.
But are there, do you know if there's any services like out of the state of New Hampshire or, that you could kind of turn to? So I guess I could give you a little bit more in depth. This company, the owner, their significant other was head of HR. And the issue was with the owner's behaviors that were harassment and beyond. So you really couldn't go to HR because it was their significant other. And I know that that's not the only company that has a similar setup. And I'm just thinking for like, if I ever had to give advice to somebody else, or somebody
Family business or whatever, yeah.
and I'm all for family businesses. I love when it works great. But when it doesn't work, it makes it, I think, very difficult for employees. So I just didn't know if there was an outside source or a place that people could turn to when HR is not an option.
Yeah. Well, I think we have Michelle who might be able to speak to that. Can I put you on the spot? I mean, that's
You sure can.
that's not my specialty, that's
Yeah.
yours, so.
You sure can. So actually, every state has a human rights commission that you can report those types of situations to, whether it's harassment, discrimination, those types of work situations where you don't feel comfortable to report to anybody in the company. And there's no, retaliation for you or anything like that. They will just investigate it. And maybe not even include you in that part of the investigation. So there are other resources at each state to do that.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
You're welcome.
Isn't that included, is that included in employee handbooks typically? Like if you
It should
have
be part of the
a complaint
harassment
process?
policy,
Okay.
that if you don't feel comfortable bringing your complaint to anyone in the organization, you can report it to the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah. I would think that, yeah. I would think that-
Some employers don't put it in there.
Mhm.
Actually, many employers don't.
Really? Okay.
And Massachusetts is the only state that, not the only state, but one state that requires it to be in there. New Hampshire does not. New York does. So it really depends on the state that you're in, if the policy requires it to be there.
Thank you.
Sam, is
That's,
that-
yeah,
that's
that
huge.
is really helpful.
In some
And we
industries,
hope,
there might be a
we hope,
union.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying in some industries there might be a union.
That's true, yeah.
Might have a
You're right.
union rep or something, someone who can bring up the issue.
Excellent point. Like where your protection is from. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we would hope that, right, it doesn't get to that point, but to your point, Sam, it happens in a lot of places that we, probably more often than it really should. And so these are all more cultural things that we can do to help in that process. And sometimes it becomes out of our control. We need to reach out in other areas. Any other questions or thoughts about some of the content or examples that some light bulbs might be going off for you?
Sheila, it's Christina. I have just like as people are starting to come back to the workforce and COVID's still an issue, especially with these Delta variants, how to deal with employers that are requiring a shot and also employees that don't want to get a shot, and kind of how to navigate being a manager.
Yes, yes, and yes. That's an excellent point. Do you want me to just speak to my thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, or what is best practices that you've heard. I mean, I just think it's going to be a really difficult situation, and I'm not really looking forward to it personally.
Well, I think speaking just from a leadership perspective and knowing how many different organizations right now that I'm aware of are in the middle of this, yes, we're moving back full-time, or we're moving back into the office hybrid. There's push and pull, and some employees have a perception that everyone thinks that all of their thoughts are shared universally, you know what I mean? And they're not, right? And that's what sometimes creates that friction. And so some people are coming back into the office with these rollouts, phase systems. A lot of companies that I know of are doing like phase systems and getting people back. And some are real happy about that and some aren't. And so that's another factor in the culture. So there's all these different layers, right? There is I want to go back. Well, I don't want to go back. And then those people working together. And how do you create a safe culture when people are coming in with different thoughts and ideas and beliefs? And then you have Do vaccines really work? I don't want it. I don't believe in a vaccine. I do believe in a vaccine. And then that whole, discomfort conversation that adds to the dynamic in the culture. And then you put all that together, right? And the managers are the ones making these decisions. And then now, like to your point, with the Delta variant coming, people are starting to take some steps back. So I get that was one of the things I wanted to make sure we covered tonight. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I think that is what people are going to start seeing more and more over this next few months. And there's policies and procedures and the way things have to roll out. And then there's how is the rollout going to be? And leaders need to understand that. And I'll share with you, my husband is in the middle of it. He is the person who has had to make the hard decision about a hybrid model. And it's like some people are real happy about it, some people aren't. And it's already, and they just started rolling out hybrid, some going back to the office, and it's already starting, right? The private phone calls, the private emails. Do you realize what these people were talking about? How these people aren't wearing, didn't have their vaccine? Should we be wearing a mask? It's just really hard for people. And there's no really perfect answer to it other than how do we help support each other and accept that everyone's going to have a different thought, belief, idea, political background, and as managers, certainly leaders, we need to make sure that we're providing the safe place for people to be who they are, and at the same time, follow the guidelines of the organization. And that's easier said than done sometimes. Any other thoughts, Michelle, from your world? Anything that you wanted to throw in there? Or?
I don't want to steal your thunder. You're doing a fabulous job.
Oh.
No, I think you raised some really good points, that it is really a challenge for employers. We went through COVID, the first round, and we thought we were coming back to normal, and then this whole new thing has happened. And managers are really struggling with differences of opinions that people have. But one thing that I always say is you can't please everybody. You just have to do the best for the people that you have, and go with that flow. And if someone doesn't want to follow the policies that you put in place, then you have other options and decisions to make.
Hard decisions.
Yeah, really hard decisions. But people are entitled to how they feel and what they believe.
Yeah. And even with the hard decisions, I can still be kind. And wow, it sounds like you're in a really, tough situation because you don't believe in that. And I understand. And I'm here to talk through that with you. And at the same time, this is how things are going to be rolled out, right? So we can still provide that empathy and open conversations. It's I can't believe, you're not going to wear your mask, or I can't believe you haven't had your vaccine, or how come you want to stay home? Like, it's that judgment, and those are the things we have to really be careful of. Because let's face it, stress will bring about a lot of things, including how we act with other people. And so that's the psychology around understanding what we bring into the workforce.
I'll add one more thing, if you don't mind. One of my clients, one of the ways that they chose to avoid some of those discussions about vaccinations is not require people to have them, right? Because they don't want to know who, what, where, when, but yet they still practice the social distancing in the hallway. They don't do the masks anymore, but they try and keep their distance, keep washing things down, but didn't want to take that personal piece from people. To disclose whether or not they had the shots and why they didn't have the shots, which I think is something to consider, whether or not you need to require people to have them. That's a big leadership decision as well.
Yes, and there's some industries that it becomes even more difficult with, like healthcare, right? Because if there's patient-centered, then what happens is then I've seen the drama play out. Oh, they just walked in the building, and the lounge, I had this happen to me once. I was coaching some administrators. They just walked into the lounge and they didn't have their vaccine. So now we got to put the masks back on. This would have been the only time we don't have to wear masks. And then what do you think happened? That person felt isolated, ganged up on, and yeah, so it really does add a lot, and there's no real good answer. But if you can go back to, separate from, policy and moving forward with what the organization's decisions are, move back to what can I do to create this safe place, and work out whatever it is that we have outside, so that when we get there with people, it's not coming into play and adding to the drama or the negativity or the distrust.
Could it be an opportunity actually to build that communication and safe space if, when the policy is decided upon by the whoever, heads of departments or whatever, to say, let's all get together. We'd like to explain to you our thought process behind this. And just so that, it's not open for discussion what the decision is, but have that moment of, this is why. I don't know if that's
I think it's a great thought, and I think the answer is really, I would say the answer depends on what you have in front of you. Like, do you know you have people who can get in a room and have that conversation, or people coming in volatile, at which point maybe having more individual conversations.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yes, opening the conversations, and this has really been hard. We don't even, we're not sure if this is the right decision, but this is what we've decided collectively, and how can we best support you
Right.
as a way to help them to move beyond.
Yeah, I think that comes back down to like the human factor, right?
Exactly.
You show vulnerability of the decision and how it was a difficult one to make. Hopefully people will be a little bit more understanding about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I feel like people tend to generally respond well to knowledge and not being felt like they're made to be shut out of. Obviously, the decision's made by the people who make the decisions, but it creates that team feel when they're at least informed about why or what led to the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I know we're probably getting close to time. 3 things that I want you to think about in your worlds, and whether or not you believe your employees are feeling like there's a psychologically safe culture. The one is, think about if there's been a change in their communication. Has somebody gone from being pretty communicative to being more closed, or have staff meetings all of a sudden been silent, when in fact in the past they've been more open and just there's been more discussion. So sometimes we can see if people are feeling a distrust by how their participation or communication is. So think about that. Have you stopped hearing about problems or mistakes? Are people not bringing it to you as much? So it's a just different way to switch that lens. Instead of, oh, great, I think everything's fine, I haven't heard any problems. These people used to bring things to me and now they're not. And maybe it's because there's no problems, but I think I'm going to check in with them and open that conversation up. And the third one would be, has the feedback stopped? Can you tell me how I'm doing? Or whatever type of feedback is in your world. So it's really the stopping the quietness, the change. I call it off the trajectory. So if there's been a change with an individual or within a discussion or a team meeting, then there's probably something going on and important to check it out, which would help maybe open up for you to be able to see what's going on in your teams. Okay, so those are my 3, turn it around the other way, and it might help to see whether or not there really is some stuff going on. All right, and then as we wrap up again, and then I'll ask if there's more questions. And this is the piece that I will either do, or Sam, I'll send to you to send out. There's a really neat sheet that I think is just a really good summary. And there are 4 stages of psychological safety. The first is inclusion safety, which we've talked about, that basic human need to connect and belong. So to feel a part of, allowing that type of culture in your organization. The second stage is learner safety, So it's satisfying that basic human need to learn and grow. So allowing the atmosphere and the culture for maybe some mistakes as a learning opportunity, or allowing, trainings or outside things to the people that you work with. The third stage is contributor safety. And that is satisfying the basic human need to make a difference, right? So allowing people to be part of those discussions, those decisions, the creativity, the ideas, and not shooting them down, right? So that's the fourth stage. And then, the third, and then the fourth is challenger safety. So does somebody feel, am I allowing, or am I setting the tone to allow some people to say, I'm not sure if I agree with that. Or I have another idea. Or people not saying that, and if they're not, that means there's probably some fear of being different or getting in trouble. So those four, I think, kind of sums up what we've talked about in a more concise way that you can have next to you, and then you can kind of look at it. And they're really all, and Chris, you said it, they're really all connected to that being a human, that human basic need of what do we need? Maslow has a hierarchy of needs, and the first is food, safety, water. We build on that, right? So as we build on some of these basic foundational pieces, we and our organizations will start feeling more included and safe and being together.
Thank you very much for
You're welcome. It was
coming
great
in
being here.
and giving us this great opportunity to even just talk and get some things out there. I think it's been awesome. So we really appreciate it, and look forward to the next one.